Hello and welcome to NoCast by CMUBS, the podcast where knowledge meets inspiration. I'm your host, and I'm here to take you on a journey through ideas, insights, and stories that shape the world of business, research, and innovation. Each episode, we bring you thoughtful conversations, practical wisdom, and perspectives from experts and changemakers. Whether you're a student, a researcher, or simply someone who loves learning, this is your space to explore, grow, and stay inspired. Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive into today's episode and discover something worth knowing.
Okay, so let's talk about something we hear all the time. Industry needs to go green. Sounds simple, right? But the reality? Well, it's this incredibly complex web of costs, rules, and technology. So what does it actually take for a company to get serious about sustainability? And why do so many good intentions just seem to fizzle out?
I mean, it's a really frustrating question, isn't it? We see companies announce these huge, ambitious green goals, but then the results are messy, or they're way too expensive, or they just don't seem to make a real difference. And it's usually not because they aren't trying. The path to being truly sustainable is just paved with all these contradictions.
And this right here is the heart of the problem. You could call it the great industrial paradox. On one side, you have an absolute economic miracle. Places like the Asia Pacific have become the world's factory floor, lifting millions and millions of people out of poverty. But the flip side is that the very same engine of progress has created an environmental nightmare. We're talking smog-filled cities and dangerously polluted waterways.
And you know what's wild? Even the experts can't seem to get on the same page. For every single study you find that says, hey, going green saves you money, you'll find another one that says, watch out, the upfront costs are going to kill your profits. So who are you supposed to believe? It's this exact puzzle that a group of researchers decided they had to solve. They figured that to get a real, clear answer, you can't just look at one company or one country. You need a much, much bigger picture. You need a totally new way of looking at the entire problem. So, how in the world do you crack a code that complex? Well, instead of just adding another opinion to the pile, these researchers did something really clever. They decided to analyze all the research that was already out there, all at once, using AI as a kind of superpowered detective. Now, to make sense of all this chaos, they pulled out a classic model. It's called the Technology Organization Environment Framework, or TOE for short. It's a really simple but powerful way to sort all the evidence into three main buckets that shape any big decision a company makes. Think of it like this. First, you've got the technology. That's the actual green stuff, like new solar panels or better recycling processes. Then you have the organization. That's everything happening inside the company walls. You know, its budget, its culture, whether the bosses are actually serious about this. And finally, you have the external environment, all the pressures from the outside world, like government rules and what your competitors are doing. And when I say they had a lot of data, I'm not kidding. They were basically drowning in information. To get that clear picture, they fed their AI model the summaries from a staggering 404 different academic studies on this topic. That is a massive amount of reading for any team of humans to get through. So here's how this AI detective went to work. First, it vacuumed up all the data. Then, using natural language processing, it basically read and understood all of it, automatically sorting every piece of information into those T, O, and E buckets. And then came the cool part. It ran a super sophisticated analysis to spot the hidden patterns and trade-offs, the kind of deep insights a person could easily miss when looking at so much research. All right, so after all that high-tech number crunching, what did the AI actually find? Well, the answer wasn't a simple, yes, go green, or no, it's a bad idea. It was something way more interesting, and honestly, a lot more useful. The single biggest takeaway from all of this data is that sustainability isn't some switch you just flip on. It's not a destination you just arrive at. It is a constant, never-ending balancing act. And pretty much every single decision a company makes involves a trade-off between things that are pulling in opposite directions. So let's look at technology. The AI found that adopting proven, mature green tech is awesome for getting immediate results. You can cut your emissions right away. But, and this is a big but, it often creates what the researchers call innovation inertia. You basically get locked into that one solution, and it makes you much slower to jump on the next, even better technology when it comes along. And we see the exact same kind of pattern with government regulations.
Sure, strict top-down rules are really effective at pushing companies to clean up their act, but that pressure can also tie a company's hands, locking them into rigid ways of doing things that make it really hard to be flexible or adapt to changes in the market. Now, the AI also ranked all the different factors to see what really moves the needle, and the picture was crystal clear. By far, the biggest drivers for real-world sustainability results had to do with technology and the external environment, things like regulations. Social factors, company culture and that sort of thing, while they are important, just had a less direct impact in the data. Of course, these trade-offs don't exist in a bubble. How companies manage them looks totally different depending on where you are in the world. So let's do a quick trip around the globe. This is pretty fascinating. What the study found is that in the Asia-Pacific region, the approach tends to be very top-down, with strict government rules. It gets strong environmental results, but it can really hurt efficiency. Europe, on the other hand, tends to use market-based approaches, like carbon trading, which seems to create a better balance. And then you have North America, which is way more decentralized and voluntary. That's great for sparking innovation, but it leads to some pretty inconsistent results across the board. Okay, so pointing out the problem is one thing, but what do you actually do about it? This is where the research gets really powerful, because it goes beyond just diagnosing the issue and actually offers a clear, practical playbook for leaders. Think of it this way. Instead of a simple map that just points to one spot, this research gives leaders a compass. It's a tool for navigating the really tough, messy terrain of sustainability. It helps them understand the forces pushing and pulling on them, so they can make smarter strategic choices, instead of just constantly reacting to problems. The playbook all starts by making leaders stare 4 fundamental trade-offs right in the face. Are you trying to lower your costs or lower your emissions? Are you building for today's efficiency or for tomorrow's flexibility? Is your goal just to comply with the rules, or are you aiming for real, game-changing innovation? These are the core tensions you always have to manage. And on top of managing those trade-offs, any successful green project has to be measured against 3 pillars of performance. It's not enough to just be green. A solution also has to be cost-efficient, it has to work in the real world, that's operational performance, and it absolutely, positively has to meet all the legal and regulatory rules. Finally, the research lays out some really concrete, actionable steps. For instance, instead of betting the farm on one new technology, it suggests you should set aside a small piece of your budget, maybe 5 to 15%, just to explore new, unproven ideas. And this is crucial. It says you should actively work with regulators to help shape smarter rules, instead of just waiting for them to be handed down. The big idea here is to be proactive, use data, and constantly learn and adapt. So in the end, this whole deep dive leaves us with a really powerful final thought. Maybe the goal was never about finding the one single perfect answer for how to go green. Maybe the real challenge and the real opportunity is just to get a whole lot better at asking the right questions and intelligently managing the messy, complicated, but absolutely vital trade-offs that always come with progress.
Thank you for joining us on NoCast by CMUBS. We hope today's episode sparked new ideas and inspired your next steps. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow our podcast and stay connected so you won't miss the insights, stories, and meaningful discussions coming up next. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and see you in the next episode.